Okay, we're here with Tom Phoenix. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing all right. It's fun to be here at OSCON.
Great. So you have a new book out?
Yeah, well, it's not a new book so much as a new edition of our old book. It's the version, to keep up with Perl version 5.10.
Is that meant more for a beginner?
Well, this is for especially beginners in Perl, but we're covering more than we used to in it, in that Perl has moved on, so we've covered a little bit more.
Okay.
Well, I got started with Perl years ago when I was wanting to do some stuff for the museum I was working for, and when I started getting into Perl, I started getting more and more into Perl. It was one of those things where the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn, and so it became a snowball effect.
Do you have formal training in computer science?
Not really a lot of formal training in computer science. More my background is in education. I'm mostly a teacher and just happen to be somebody who teaches Perl. Yeah, Stonehenge, we are one of the premier Perl training companies. We are also doing some stuff lately with Smalltalk, and so we've been branching out a little bit that way.
You're proficient in Smalltalk as well?
Oh, I hate to use the term proficient, but I do a little bit of work with Smalltalk, especially with Squeak and Seaside. Seaside is a web framework that's made for being able to publish things written in Smalltalk on several different Smalltalk platforms over the web. So Seaside lets you do your programming in a more flexible way, where you don't have to keep track of all the things that the web needs to keep track of. For example, if some request comes in from somebody, another request comes in later, it's hard to tie those two requests together to recognize that they're from the same user. But in Seaside, that's all taken care of for you.
Is the language Seaside, or is that more of the environment?
Seaside is the environment. It's in Smalltalk. Smalltalk is the programming language, but Seaside itself has been ported to Squeak and several other Smalltalk environments. It's the object-oriented language that is objects all the way down.
Okay, so how does that differ from, say, C++ object orientation or Java object orientation?
Yeah, in Smalltalk, the objects are there from the very beginning. They weren't added on later. And as a result, the object support is all the way down to the core. So in Smalltalk, in particular in Squeak, you can drill down and find out how anything is done and change it if you don't like the way it's working. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. It's not like you're locked into an operating system where once you find what the operating system does, you can't change that.
So for those that aren't familiar with Squeak, how does Squeak relate to Smalltalk?
Squeak is an open source implementation of Smalltalk that's made available for free. So anybody who wants to can go to squeak.org, I think it is, and download Squeak. If you get the Squeak one-click experience, it works on Windows, Linux, or Mac. You click on it and it starts up your Squeak browser. And you'll find yourself back in the 1980s, because a lot of the user interface to Squeak looks like it was written back in the 1980s, because that's when it was written. But that doesn't mean it's not useful. You can still pull up the menus, and if you don't like the way the menus are, you can change it, because it's all Smalltalk all the way down.
So it really has a web-centric concept in mind.
Well, the web part is Seaside. Seaside is the web application framework for Smalltalk that is available for Squeak. That's where it actually started out, and then it's been ported to, I think, 4 or 5 other Smalltalks.
So it's very similar to Ruby with Rails.
It's similar to that in terms of the sort of things you can produce. One of the advantages is that even a moderately powerful computer these days can serve around 100 dynamically created pages in a second, which is a typically better throughput than you can get with Ruby on Rails.
In Smalltalk, is it a dynamically typed language or statically typed?
Well, with Smalltalk, it doesn't have any strong typing the way that some languages do. So you can store any type of object in anything. It's sometimes called duck typing, because if it acts like a duck, then we're going to treat it like a duck. And so this allows you a lot of flexibility as a programmer. Not everybody's so in favor of that flexibility, however. It doesn't always work to your advantage.
I'd like to get just quickly back to more of your bio page, and you talked about you understand language Esperanto, is this correct?
Yeah. I started learning Esperanto about the same time I started learning Perl, interestingly enough. Esperanto, for people who don't know, is a created language that was designed to be an extra language for everybody in the world. It doesn't belong to any one country. So I get together with other Esperanto speakers from all over the world and talk about usually world affairs and things like that.
So just out of curiosity, do you feel that your learning Esperanto has helped you made you a better programmer?
I actually think so. It's kind of a funny thing, but there's a lot of connection between spoken languages and computer languages. And Perl in particular, Perl was written by Larry Wall, who's a linguist at heart. And there's a lot of linguistic features that have actually slipped into Perl. And knowing more than one human language has actually helped in that way.
Can you follow up a little bit more on that? What sort of linguistic features do you feel made its way into Perl?
Well, as a linguist, Larry sees human languages and computer languages as being somewhat similar. They, in both cases, you're trying to explain something. In the case of computer language, you're trying to explain it both to a human being and to a computer. That is, you're explaining it to whoever has to read your source code later and to the computer. So in human terms, we often, for example, in English, we will have longer words for some things and shorter words for other things. And typically the shorter words are for the everyday things. Like a word like time that we use all the time is just a single syllable. So the same sort of thing happens in Perl, where anything that you do all the time tends to be something short and easy to do.
Opening a file.
Yeah, that sort of a thing. If it's easy to, if it's something you're doing all the time, there should be an easy way to do it.
That's
All right, well, Parrot is the virtual machine that will run Perl 6 and other interpreted languages. It's being designed in a way that makes it possible for it to do a lot of languages so that it won't just be used for Perl 6. But one of the advantages of that is that when your Perl 6 program is running, if it needs to call a subroutine that somebody wrote in Python, it'll be able to do that. So it'll be able to do many languages like Perl, Python, and the whole family of them. Well, I think one of the things that the people working on Parrot are really hoping for is that it will become the virtual machine that everybody will want to target. That ideally, if we can make something popular like that, then lots of languages will be on it, and there won't need to be a fight. That is, if you've got a big project that needs 5 programmers, all 5 of them can do their own favorite programming language and combine their work in one application running under Parrot. Let's see, does Perl make the best hackers, and what is a hacker? Well, I've got to say a hacker is, to me, somebody who tries to find all that the system will do, tries to do a little bit more than what it was necessarily intended to do by the designer. And you can do that in any field. It doesn't have to be with computers, but computers and software offer lots of opportunities for you. Perl in particular does encourage people to explore, to be hackers, to write Perl poetry or to write some obfuscated Perl code that may be very confusing to somebody, but when they finally figure out how it works, they'll be impressed that it's so cool.
Well, thank you very much, John.
All right, thanks for having me.